morning, everyone. Firstly, I'd like to thank the Beros Centre of Olympic Research and Education, Rashtriya Raksha University, Vice-Chancellor Professor Patel, Dr. Utsav Chawari, our good friend Prithvi and his team, and the rest of the team that has made this international conference possible and brought together such an impressive cohort of international presenters. Today, myself and Chris will share the Perth 2027 World Police and Fire Games journey so far, not as a finished story, but as a living case study of our strategy in motion. The presentation isn't about perfect answers. It touches on how our strategy has evolved to meet the changing context and challenges, whilst our vision, values and focus have remained constant. Chris and I will try and frame these insights so they may be of relevance for future World Police and Fire Games host city, including Ahmedabad in 2029, who we already know are very well advanced and across all the challenges ahead of them. Before we get into the heavy stuff, I will play you one of our games reels to give you an idea of what Perth 2027 World Police and Fire Games team will be delivering. So I'm wondering who's thinking they might change their travel plans for next year and come to Perth in 2027 to experience some of what we've got to offer. Who we are. My name's Mathew Beros. I'm an inspector with the WA Police Force. Chris Hadley is an acting sergeant, also with the WA Police Force. I have 30 years experience with police. Chris joined police a little bit later in life and brings with him a massive experience in the food and beverage industry, working with companies like Coca-Cola, Kellogg's, national, international dairy companies. In the top, to the right of that slide, you can see a map of Australia. The left side of that map is obviously Western Australia, and it shows the scale of our jurisdiction. So we cover from bottom to the top, which gives us some policing challenges. I'll take you through our strategic journey in stages. First, where the Perth 2027 World Police and Fire Games sits in scale and proximity and complexity. Then the three strategic phases: bid, planning and delivery. Throughout it, I'll highlight the strategies that proved critical, not just operationally, but politically, financially and culturally. Before the strategy comes context. Scale, geography, workforce, stakeholder environment all shape what is possible. At a glance, there's over 8,500 Games participants or athletes that will be attending. It brings around 20,000 visitors to Perth. from 70 or more countries, and we'll be delivering 65 sports across 46 different venues. What's important here is not the numbers themselves, but the implications. We will have a heavy reliance on volunteers and value-in-kind support, a distributed delivery footprint, and a very little margin for error in governance and coordination. From the very beginning, we made a conscious decision. Strategy would adjust by phase, but our purpose would not. Each stage requires different skills, different leadership behaviours, and different success measures. At a very high level perspective, we look at the game's journey as broken into three distinct stages. The bid, proving credibility and securing trust of the selection committee for the rights to host the games. Planning, designing a system capable of delivering the games, effectively our operational blueprint. Delivery, executing consistently under pressure and achieving our legacy outcomes. One of our key takeaways is while each stage in this process deserves its own strategic focus to deliver on those critical milestones relative to that point in time, all strategies developed and actions taken must be done with the end result, the games, and our legacy objectives in mind. All strategies throughout the phase must remain on the same pathway, build on earlier successes, and the momentum must be maintained. So these next two slides are very full of information and words. I'm not going to go through them in detail. They capture our strategy on 2 pages, and they're there to illustrate how our strategy has been refined over time according to what stage in the cycle we were at and the prevailing environment. As an example, our vision, as you can see, is a simple sentence. At the start of our strategic journey, the bid process, our strategy document was very large, with a long vision and a long mission statement, values, goals, objectives, supporting strategies, and legacy, and it resembled a business case. That approach was relevant for our needs at that time, and we needed to demonstrate legitimacy to our government, our emergency services agencies, and big corporations. It was critical for our success. However, that word-heavy strategy document wasn't going to translate well to our growing workforce during the planning stage. So we simplified it to give clarity and therefore more meaning to our team. Our focus is where we dedicate our work effort and where our time needs to be spent. Helps us avoid scope creep, and again, it aligns our decision making and our prioritisation. This slide is our goals. So how will we know if we achieve success? Further into our strategy document, we break these down into actions, and given we're operating with a project management system, they're further broken down into that project management style. Our strategy doesn't need to be perfect, but so some of the takeaways for us was that we needed a solid and detailed strategic base to begin from. Secondly, our strategy didn't need to be perfect, but it does need continual, purpose-driven and meaningful review with our whole team involved in that process. As we moved into the planning stage, where we fully transitioned into project management mode and our workforce increases in size, that strategy needs to be simple and clear, as project management inherently captures some of the lower level objectives and actions. So the bid phase is where many events succeed or fail before they even begin. For us, the bid strategy had an overriding objective with the end result in mind. Secure commitment, not just permission. Support. So our strategy heavily focused on institutional buy-in and support across the categories you can see on the screen: alignment across state and federal government, and early engagement with venue operators and city authorities. Our lessons here was that credibility is built through relationships long before any contracts. Building relationships at the levels required is hard. Just getting in the door is often difficult. Once in the door, establishing our legitimacy was crucial to gaining that meaningful buy-in and then signing those contracts down the line. This stage was key for us to establish our corporate brand. I don't mean the brand that you see on our social media websites or t-shirts. I'm referring to how Perth 27 World Police and Fire Games as an organisation was seen in the corporate world as a legitimate and credible entity. Securing that early credibility greases the wheels for future corporate stakeholders and partners. What do they hear and what do they think when they hear about the World Police and Fire Games 2027 as an organisation? Does our brand and reputation open their minds to working with us? And we focused on that. Some of the other key factors during gaining support was obviously leveraging the connections that we had to our agency heads, our connections to ministers and to government locally, and then where we could leverage that federally. Finance was another key focus during this phase. Without funds, we can't do anything, including continuing with the actual bid. Our financial approach was deliberately conservative, and we emphasised mixed funding models, strong value-in-kind contributions, and seed funding from our own sports federation to prove early viability. Importantly, we did not oversell our commercial revenue. That's a very basic snapshot of our income, and as you can see, it's not huge, hence our discipline and need to have good governance and organisation throughout this process. We aim to build confidence by demonstrating our financial realism and discipline, which proved crucial with government decision makers and the Games Bid Selection Committee. So sport was another heavy focus during our bid process. Sport delivery credibility was a cornerstone. Our strategy during this process was to focus on the venues critical to hosting high-quality sporting fields and the partner organisations that will elevate the sporting competition, the management and the athlete experience. We focused on demonstrating to the selection committee access to world-class venues and our relationships and commitments from the state and local sports organisations, sporting clubs and relevant sporting governing bodies. The message to the selection committee from us was simple. We understand sport, we understand the delivery risk, and we have the key ingredients to host a high-quality sports competition and experience for our athletes and spectators. Earlier this week, Professor Makos talked about three main priorities for National Olympic Academies, one of which was preparing sporting federations for what is coming their way and what will be expected of them. This was key for us during this stage. Our intention wasn't just to get a ticket of approval from these sporting bodies to make our bid look strong. It was about starting those relationships with transparency, where the sporting bodies understood the nuances and expectations of the World Police and Fire Games, knowing that they would be asked to deviate from delivering their sporting events the way they normally would, so that it met the standards and expectations of our games. So I'll move on to the planning phase and how our strategic focus changed. Once the bid was secured, our strategic focus shifted dramatically. The challenge was no longer persuasion, it was designing a system with good governance that could scale. The dominant planning strategy was structure before activity. We invested early in strong governance, developing the functional area concept for our planning, which was aligned to the host manual provided by the World Police and Fire Games Federation. Also focused on resource models that allowed us to scale up and down. You can see up on the screen our 4 key areas of strategy during this stage, and some facets of each. The key takeaway from this slide is the heavy lifting. The idea behind this is so it can be transferred to future hosts and done so in a format that is helpful and enables education. Historically, this has not been done well. Basically, every 2 years, the new host city starts from scratch. We wanted to avoid that. Everyone loves governance. Our governance structure is deliberately layered. Strategic oversight at the board level, operational coordination through our committees, and tactical execution through our functional areas. It avoided two common traps that we were expecting, which is too much control at the centre or fragmented decision making at the edges. Sitting above the structure, you'll see the United Lights Sports Federation, which is a not-for-profit company limited by guarantee that we established. We established this company as the entity responsible for the games. Whilst we are very much agency-driven in delivering our games, e.g. our police force, fire department and paramedic services are largely driving the resourcing of the games, we needed to create this separate entity as somewhat a level of risk mitigation from those agencies. It also allowed us to operate in a much more agile and efficient manner compared to government agencies with their levels of bureaucracy. Further into the presentation, I'll show you our organisational structure for our games management team, which is really where all the magic happens. So our board and committee purpose, they're up there on the screen. I won't go into them into too much detail, but it defines where the decision sat, who was accountable, and how escalation occurred. So I talked earlier about the functional area concept, and that's how we're tackling this beast. These functional areas become the engine room of delivery. At the centre, in black on the screen, you'll see the key deliverables, and these have been taken from the Federation's host manual. They're broken up into mandatory deliverables, which we have agreed to deliver contractually, as well as they are required for good games, and there are recommended deliverables, which are not contractually required, but are based on best practice, which we want to live up to. Above that centre strip is our approach. So it starts with our games management team directors, who provide that strategic overview and translate that down the organisation, defining roles and responsibilities. Next in line are the managers, who develop the more detailed plans for the day-to-day execution. Then we have the coordinators, right at the coalface, with specific tasks that will ensure smooth execution and ultimately our delivery. I've hidden our key takeaway from this slide down the bottom, which is the interdependencies across functional areas, across key deliverables. And these interdependencies are not to be underestimated. They must be addressed consistently and in more depth than you think. And even then, even when you think you're doing it in as much detail as you need to, you're probably not doing it enough. So clearly mapping these interdependencies and not being so naive enough as to think you have it covered is important. Now this is a scary slide. Prepare yourselves, because I'm going to go through it in minute detail. No, just kidding. It's there just to illustrate the functional areas and give you an oversight of what that looks like. As soon as you look at it, if you're like me, your head starts spinning and you wonder how to make sense of this jumbled, seemingly never-ending list of functions. Which leads me into my next slide. Project management is obviously key to delivering an event like this. We treat this as a strategic capability, not an admin function. We use Monday.com as the project management software solution. Important to our project management approach is the centralised documentation, the approval processes built within it, audit trails, meaningful and insightful reporting, and controlled access. This ensures transparency, particularly with approvals required from the World Police Fire Games Federation, which then have contractual implications. It helps with version control, organisational memory, and when we onboard new staff. This is our organisational structure for our games management team. It reflects the functional area approach I talked about earlier. It also leads into our staged, scaled approach, which I will talk about. We started lean with the senior leadership first, and we expand only as the functional needs emerge. This protects our budgets, reduces complexity early, and ensures that roles were purpose-driven, not title-driven. The roles that you see in yellow on the screen are our current staff as of January 2026. The roles that are bordered with the mint colour are future positions to be filled. Workforce strategy. Our workforce strategy follows a staged philosophy. Directors first, managers next, coordinators and volunteers last. Again, this ensures our knowledge transfer, our clear accountability, and a controlled ramp up to games time. Lastly, I'll talk about, before handing over to Chris, I'll talk about the precinct model that we have adopted. We're delivering 65 different sports for our games across 46 venues. Luckily for us, Perth has world-class sporting venues which cater for this number of sports, and we have several venues to choose from. But as can be expected, they're not built next door to each other. We took the approach of selecting venues based on meeting the sporting needs and on the ability to be grouped geographically within precincts across our metropolitan area. By clustering venues and accommodation and transport, our aim is to maximise cost effectiveness, enhance operational efficiency by centralising key facilities and services to a precinct rather than across 65 individual locations. It improves our security and safety by bringing the areas to be monitored in as close as we can. It enhances the athlete experience by bringing everyone, including the community, closer together. Hand over to Chris.
Hello, is this working? Can you hear me? You working? Hello, can you hear me? Good morning, everybody. Or in Australia would say g'day. G'day, everybody. Thanks, Glenn, for that insightful introduction to the World Police and Fire Games and where we're at the moment. I get to talk about some of the fun stuff, some of the branding, some of our marketing strategies, and leading into delivery, the things that haven't actually happened yet, but these are our plans and what we hope to do there. So as you can see from our brand and our marketing plan, one of our key items was in establishing the brand early, ensuring that people can see clearly the Perth 2027 icon as early as the previous World Police and Fire Games. So for us, that was in Birmingham, Alabama last year, where we first actually met the university and delegates from India. But establishing that brand early for key travellers and people who are already engaged at the World Police and Fire Games was critical. Making sure they can see that brand in Birmingham for 10 days, time and time again. So that included different marketing items, water bottles, hats, sunglasses, pins. So everywhere you walked around the village, not of our games, but of the previous games, you're exposed to the Perth branding. Incorporating that was our digital and social media. So we picked up the Winnipeg 2023 Instagram page, and we were fortunate to have that pre-established audience of World Police and Fire Games attendees. What our anticipation is for the Indian 2029 games, that you pick up the Birmingham 25 page, so you already have an established audience of your attendees that would hope to come. So capturing the brand, capturing our social media, two critical elements that we're working on every single day. Identifying our target audience, community and stakeholder engagement, again, critical early pieces, because for us 2 years might seem like a long time. We're already saying the games are next year. It's a year away, and that year's gone very, very fast. For you, it's going to be 3 years. It's going to go very, very fast. So establishing these links earlier was really important. And event promotion and public relations and media outreach I'll talk to in a little bit more detail. So when I talk to target audience identification, event promotion, we have a bit of a branding issue with the World Police and Fire Games. If you think about eligible participants, you think police, and you think firefighters. The eligible participants is actually far broader than that. It incorporates paramedics, ambulance officers, it incorporates prison officers, corrections, customs officials, border patrol. So the broad definition of an athlete for the World Police and Fire Games is not just a policeman or a police woman, it's not just a firefighter, it is very far reaching. So for us, we are doing some target marketing. We're changing our structure where we have potentially the same kind of graphics, keeping that brand, making sure people are aware of the brand, but targeting it to different segments. You can see on the left here, calling all correctional agencies, something that can be placed in prisons everywhere, all over the world. We're building relationships with unions, with correctional facilities all over the world, where we can try and have aligned marketing and talking to the target audience we want to try and achieve. There are millions of potential athletes that can come to the games. We're only hoping to achieve 8,500 conservatively. We're hoping for more than that, but the potential is huge. But if we don't market correctly, we're really limiting our scope to some police and some fire and none of those that are actually eligible. And secondly, it's trying to talk to the various countries that we have. We're Perth, we're Australia, we speak English, but we're very, very aware that a lot of our target markets, whether it is the Indian community, which is a huge market for hopefully coming to Perth, the Brazilian market is a huge market for hopefully coming to Perth, trying to talk to them as much as it is about promoting our event. So digital and social media, this is a capture from our website, Adventure Awaits. That's our first stage of the website. We're currently developing our second stage of the website that will launch shortly, and our taglines changed slightly. So Adventure Awaits is our initial promotion. We're trying to sell Perth, Western Australia, the state in general, not necessarily the World Police and Fire Games, but the tourism element of our country. We were very fortunate yesterday to get around your beautiful city, and it was so obvious that there is so much opportunity in that area. Not to necessarily sell the World Police and Fire Games, because we know that people will come for the World Police and Fire Games. There is a cohort that will travel, but how do you capture more? And it's the tourism element that you have to do. So Adventure Awaits is our first iteration of that, and that will soon transition to what we're calling shoulder to shoulder. So you'll see that released soon, and that's obviously a testament to our first responders, one, standing shoulder to shoulder with each other, but also with the community. Community and stakeholder engagement, public relations and media outreach. And I'll play this video in a quick second. What I wanted to highlight with this, and I'll talk to some of the community partnerships we have, is that it's easy, well, I won't say it's easy, it's expensive to go and buy media. It's expensive to go and buy advertising. Earned media through community partnerships is something we're focusing on heavily, because yes, we have the World Police and Fire Games. That's one part of the community. How are we doing community partnerships that will earn us media national? So this clip we're about to show, we actually only did this last week before, with the Perth Children's Hospital Foundation, with some children there. And we didn't pay for any of this media, we just activated our partnership, and we got national TV coverage across Australia for that, as well as a host locally in both print, digital and TV. So if you can play this clip for us very quickly, it'd be great.
training hard to represent Western Australia at the World Police and Fire Games, but the kids at Perth Children's Hospital have given them a run for their money. Sarah Smith reports.
Usually on the front line, now facing a new challenge.
Ready?
First responders taking on kids at Perth Children's Hospital, preparing to compete in the World Police and Fire Games.
We've been doing cornhole and Connect 4, golf.
8,500 emergency workers travelling to Perth from 70 countries. They'll test their skills across 60 sports, from ice hockey to surfing. The Perth Children's Hospital Foundation partnering with the Games.
See the smiles on the kids' faces when we come out here and really just make their days just as much as they make our day. It's really special to us.
10-year-old Tyler Stewart was hit by a taxi in New York in December 2024.
Tyler had a broken femur as well as degloving injuries to his right leg and burns.
A chance for him to smile, coming face to face with lifesavers.
I've also met a fiery, as you can see, and then I've also met some nurses.
The World Games are set to be held across 10 days in March of 2027. A chance for emergency workers to get in some practice.
It's a beautiful location for it to be hosted, and we're really excited to get behind it.
Cool. So you can see there that earned media, it actually cuts through more than just having a poster up somewhere. It's eyeballs that people will see. And clearly, something like with the Children's Hospital, that community engagement, community outreach is really important as well. Oh. There we go. So our target audience, one of our key areas in identifying this data was, again, at Birmingham. It was trying to subscribe as many individuals who were already at the World Police and Fire Games to understand where they're coming from, what sports they're playing, what they're interested in. Like Glenn mentioned earlier, there was no real strong data set to hand over to us before we started. We hope to change that somewhat and to hand over to the future host in 2029. But for us, the activation at Birmingham, Alabama was critical because we know they are people who are travelling to the games. But where are they coming from? Once we finished in here, there's some pins outside and there's a subscribe now QR code. Those pins are for all of you, but that QR code for us is really important to get people to subscribe early. And for you, Perth 2027 is that opportunity to capture that market, to capture the data that will help you to build where you're going to be doing your targeted marketing around the world. We can see as well our goals here. So 58% of our participants we hope to bring in from overseas, 16% from around Western Australia and 26% from interstate. So we feel like they're achievable numbers based on past games as well as past iterations of what we've done within Australia, and our early modelling of where we anticipated visitors to come from is currently reflected within the subscription data, and that will only increase as time goes on. Another really important element for us, particularly on feedback from Birmingham even prior to getting there, was the importance of the sport schedule, and in line with that is the host venue. So ensuring that host venues are committed, and again we had an incredible day yesterday out. We saw many host venues. Of course, the university is a host venue, so it feels like you're very well advanced in your planning stage in that area of having secured host venues, and certainly with your future games at the Commonwealth Games and the Olympic aspirations, that's a critical element. But the sport schedule is not something to be taken lightly, and being able to present that to your travellers in Perth, that you have a sport schedule that's defined, enables them to plan ahead early, to book their travel, to book their accommodation, to work out things where if I'm a swimmer, I can do an open water swim and I can do a pool swimming. So in that way, you're maximising the entrance, one person participating in multiple events. It obviously doesn't make a lot of sense when you might have indoor soccer and outdoor soccer being played at the same time, because largely it's the same athlete, it's the same competitor doing that. So putting a lot of work into the sport schedule to minimise clashes, to making sure that in coordination with the federation, the events are in a particular order, whether it be some of the ballistic shooting sports is really important. And then having that 95% locked in and complete when it comes to Perth 2027 and the activation that you'll have at Perth 2027 to enable those future athletes who are in Perth to decide, is India well organised? Do I know I'm going to be able to participate in the events I want to participate in? Do I know what the venue that it's going to be hosted at, being able to present those venues. Again, we saw the venues yesterday, and some of them are just, they're brand new, they're state of the art. So presenting all those things to future travellers is really important. And we did that well, and we had good anecdotal feedback from the audience in Birmingham that they didn't get that prior to those games, particularly 2 years in advance. Okay, delivery. So this was a really important slide for us because there's a lot of relevance to what the university is doing here as well, and that's our partnership with Edith Cowan University in Perth. So for us, we're not as potentially well resourced as what the hosts are for 2029, and being agency led, we've got to bring people in off the front line from police, fire, paramedics, etc. So our partnership with ECU was twofold. One, it was to provide us with some really strong, capable people across the university and education sector to help us impact key roles. But then there was more than that. It was legacy, okay, and it was trying to give opportunity for those students to get experience in a real life setting, in a world-class multi-sport mega event. As you can see from sort of late last year, we've got an MOU with ECU. We're presently preparing for work integrated learning opportunities and defining what areas they can assist with. In the short term, we're looking at things like risk planning, risk management. We've had students that have been over in London for the last year, in their third year. They're now a 4th year student, and they'll help us continue to develop our risk management planning and emergency response planning. Even things from a finance perspective. And then come games time, there's a huge opportunity for that real world activation, and certainly in the sports science area, in medical, massage, taping, things like that. Things like photography, things like journalism, providing the opportunity to the students, but then being able to capture as much of the games as we possibly can. And then legacy research. So they're already trying to assist with planning after the games. So what does that research look like from all the travellers coming in? They're going to have touch points around the games to talk to people, talk to travellers, and build their own research in that respect. So that's been an incredible early stage of the partnership, and one of the things we've had a good few conversations this week with various people here is how do we then partner our university partnership with the university partnership for the 2029 World Police Fire Games as well with your university. So it's an exciting prospect, and it's an important one for us. So I'll work through these things, some of our delivery, because it hasn't happened yet. This is what we're planning. We're fortunate that St. John Ambulance is one of our hosting partners and delivery partners, being a critical element. And of course, from a medical standpoint, the last thing you can hope for is a serious injury or a fatality during the games. That would be the absolute worst possible outcome, and it has happened. So ensuring that we have covered off on every possible outcome and our response to those outcomes. Policies in particular, so it was certainly mentioned earlier in the week around things like the heat policy and the concussion policy. In March this year in Perth, it averaged temperature from 28 degrees to 35 degrees. It has got up to 40 degrees. If there's heat policies, we have to ensure the welfare of our athletes and our travellers is the most important thing in that respect. It's delaying games, it's scheduling games outside of the heat of the day, particularly if they're outside sports. So there's going to be a significant overlay with medical, and we're fortunate to have that partnership with St. John's. Volunteers, Glenn touched on this, a significant volunteer workforce, 2,500 volunteers. Again, we've had a few events in Perth, and you've had certainly a few events here as well where there's been a large number of volunteers required. We're hoping to put on a really good event for volunteers, being planned, being focused, ensuring that every volunteer knows their role. A volunteer doesn't want to turn up and not be clear on what is expected of them. They want to have a role. They want to be told what to do, and we hope to be able to give a really robust goals for our volunteers. On top of that, the volunteer management system there is something that Glenn's team is working through at the moment to try and ensure that when volunteers do come on board, whether they're long-term or just for games time, we've got the relevant human resources. We've got the relevant induction, rostering, policies, uniforms, sizing, all of those sorts of things early. And then we're catering for them. We're looking after them during the games. Some volunteers will work probably for 2 weeks straight every single day. Others might do a day here and there, but making sure we're covering all of our volunteers. Registration. This is another key one where we anticipate with 20,000 people coming through, there's going to be things that we can plan for and things that will come up that we're not sure about. Okay, so we're trying to cover off every single base, but I'm sure there's always going to be something. What we learned from Birmingham, what we will experience, and then hopefully what we'll be able to pass on to future hosts. One of the key things in that area is language barriers and ensuring that there's translation services across the board. If we just bring in our team or everybody from Australia and we've got 70 countries from around the world and we can't communicate, that's going to be a problem. So trying to be very targeted in ensuring that we have the right amount of resources in that field. And this needs to be skilled and efficient volunteers, checking accreditations. Certainly one of the things that's important for World Police and Fire Games is the accreditation and ensuring that they are eligible athletes to participate. There is certainly the registration system that happens before that. Come that day of checking in and handing over the accreditation to the athlete, making sure all that's checked and the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted, get that the right way around. So skilled and efficient volunteers in that field. An athlete pack storage and collection point. 10,000 athlete bags, another 2,500 volunteer bags. Again, various shirt sizing, various shoe sizing, things like that. Operationally, it's a big task, so having skilled and efficient volunteers. Our convention. So this one, again, it wasn't particularly effective in Birmingham. In Perth, we're hoping to do something much more larger and sophisticated, but for good measure. So ensuring that we're targeting these three key areas: mental and physical wellness for our people, industry and trade, and career and lifestyle planning. Three distinct zones, three distinct themes, and that is certainly going to help with our sponsorship and partnership programs to align with that, and show our people coming through that there is a whole industry that cares about first responders, and these are the kinds of things that they can do. Particularly with mental and physical wellness, it's one of our goals and our legacy goals to improve the outcomes in that space for our people, and this is a big part of that. In addition, having the ability for not just the first responders participating in the World Police and Fire Games in Perth and around the world, but for our people in Perth who might not be participating in an event, but they can also come down to the convention. They can listen to guest speakers who are talking about their industry. So from an Indian perspective, that's not just the people participating, that's your entire workforce having the opportunity to come to a convention that's about them and their work. Our opening ceremony is going to be at Optus Stadium. Some of you might be familiar with that venue from the cricket that's held in Perth, is at Optus Stadium now. It's our premier stadium, was voted the number one stadium in Australia now 3 years in a row, so we're very, very fortunate to have that facility. It's 60,000 seats. We saw Modi Stadium yesterday at 130,000 seats and thought, wow, we shouldn't complain about trying to fill our stadium because you've got a much, much bigger stadium to fill, but what an incredible venue that was. It's a big stadium for us, and it's a highlight for a lot of athletes. So we're not sort of cutting any corners in that respect, having some global talent performing and things like that. But a few key considerations, is getting athletes to that venue. That'll be a consideration here as well. Staging area pre the opening ceremony. All those athletes need to march through in country order, so staging them somewhere before they even enter the stadium. Returning transport, and then can you even activate on the ground? That's another consideration we have to work through as well. Super Sunday is our largest community event, so this one's a little bit different to what's been done in previous games. We're utilising the first Sunday of the games to host a lot of our firefighter sports. They're quite marquee events. The Ultimate Firefighter is incredibly fun to watch. If you get a chance later, check it out on YouTube, the Ultimate Firefighter Championship. Our muster, our version of tug of war, which is a fire truck pull, and there's also going to be, along that road you can see along the front there, a cycle sprint, one of the events, and it's also part of our marathon course on that day, which is the path along the river there. So it's a beautiful venue, and we're hoping to get 15 to 20,000 community members down to both watch the events, but we're also taking it as an opportunity to showcase our emergency services. So showcase some of the things that police do, demonstrations of what the firefighters do, whether it be cutting open cars or using helicopters, and same with the St. John's ambulance delivery. So this is a really important day for us to engage with the community and promote what we do. Legacy is another one where, again, it's one of our pillars, and it's certainly something that we heard earlier in the week from the Athens Olympics. They didn't necessarily think too much about legacy in their planning phase, and we're certainly trying to do that. A big part of that, again, is in health and well-being and having real clear targeted goals of what we want to achieve after the games, but having that lens through every conversation we have during our planning phase. So one of our real flagship thing is a multi-agency sports federation. We're lucky in the WA Police that we've got our own sports federation. It helps fund certain sporting initiatives for our people, and as we know that sport certainly is a really key avenue for physical and mental wellness. The fire department, St John's, Corrections, they don't have this sports federation. So we're trying to achieve a multi-agency sports federation as an outcome of hosting the games. In addition, mental wellness programs for our recruits, and also social and connective office for first responder and their families as well, bringing them together. Other legacy items, inclusion and representation, so trying to achieve increased female participation rates for our games, but being realistic about that. It'd be great to say we can get to 50% female representation. Again, we heard earlier in the week it's taken the Olympic Games 100 years to get to that. We're only at about 20 and 23% at the moment. We're chasing 30% for our games, with the hope that, again, India in 2029 look to increase that once more. And also representation of our Pacific Island nation partners as well. And lastly, but not to be understated, is recruitment and retention. What can we do with our games to both bring people into our workforce and keep them in our workforce? So there'll be a lot of initiatives happening in that space. Sustainability is another one. Caring for our environment. We need to try and drive a new sustainable standard for mass participation events. It might seem quite simple, but again, recycling of plastic bottles didn't happen in Birmingham. There was 300,000 plastic bottles that went in a bin. So we've got a very good initiative in Perth with recycling plastic, which we'll utilise. But we're also rolling that out across police stations already across Perth as part of the games. That helps with both sustainability, but it gets us our brand in every single police station as well. Further, recycling of redundant textiles, post-games, all the additional banners, signage, mesh, repurposing them into some new products to be used, and even things like some of our merchandise. So you can see a quick snapshot there of our shoes. They're through a Western Australian company called Tarkine. They're made from recycled products. They donate money to protect rainforests, and again, it's got our branding on it, which is really, really cool to see. I'm missing a few of those things off there, but that's okay. There's a lot more logos up there initially, but our partnerships are critical from a financial standpoint, yes, but again, things like the one that's not up there, Axon, for example, critical in first responder with their body-worn cameras. Not only will they help us financially, but they'll be able to activate all week with some pretty cool stuff with VR, with engaging our police and fire in particular, with activations which are critical to their business, but it adds another element of athletic experience for our athletes. And the other one I want to call out here was someone like Apple. Again, it's not a cash component, but as a partnership providing laptops, phones, iPads for all our events and registration is going to be really important as well. Oh, that's why. Just quickly, I'm not sure why that did that. Okay, I think that's us. We'll leave this up on the screen. The QR code at the top there again, we encourage you to scan that, subscribe. If you want to volunteer in Perth, you can click to volunteer. And certainly as you exit, there's some pins for everybody as well, our Perth 2027 pins. So I think we'll take some questions now. Cool. Thank you everybody for listening. What I do want to do as well is thank everyone for their friendliness and their hospitality and for being so welcoming for us this week. It's our first time in India. And it won't be our last. We're very, very grateful. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris, again, please. Thank you, team. Thank you, team. Thank you for the presentation of how Perth will be organizing the games from A to Z manner. I request anyone who have any questions, because India will be hosting the games in 2029, Ahmedabad. So I request everyone to please push.
And Chris for a nice presentation. So my first question is to Chris, that how would you like to stop ambush marketing and to protect your brand?
So, ambush marketing from other.
From your,
Yeah, so we've certainly had some early issues from a social media perspective. Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me okay?
sorry?
Can you hear me okay? That's
Yeah,
a bit better,
yeah.
Yep. So we certainly had some early issues, particularly on social media, with certainly people trying to create lookalike accounts and things like that. Early days, we certainly tried to establish as many accounts as we could in various iterations of our name to try and prevent other people from doing so. People are very creative, and it's almost impossible to prevent all of them, shutting them down, reporting them where we can. We think we've been quite successful, and that's early stage. As time goes on, we hope to build a games app and direct everybody towards our games app, and that becomes our single source of truth. So that way, if people are trying to ambush our brand, and certainly in a marketing lens, it's known that that's not our official representation, and to guide everyone back towards our app. So, and the blue tick as well. Is paying that money to have the authentication on our pages. That's probably another key area.
Thanks. So the next thing I would like to ask about how your event is insured. Is it from the public authorities or from the private entities?
Not sure how it's insured.
We've got insurance through that United Light Sports Federation Limited. We've taken out our own public liability insurance, and our risk director is currently reviewing future insurances that we'll need to make sure we've got the volunteers covered, the athletes covered, vehicles, assets, etc.
Thanks. So the last question is that would you like to have any plan to introduce Olympic truce?
To introduce what, sorry?
Would you like to have any plan to introduce Olympic truce before the games, after the games, and during the games, with the help of United Nations?
I'm not sure I understand your question. Olympic truce?
Olympic truce.
I'm not aware. Sounds good.
Thank
We do like the Olympics. It sounds good.
Yeah, this is a treaty between all the countries that they will not fight. And it's, yeah,
Okay.
it's from the Asian
won't
Olympic
fight.
Games. It's a
Sure.
treaty which was signed in the Kings, and now it's been implemented through United Nations in all the
Fantastic.
games.
Fantastic. Look, it's not something that I've been made aware of, to be honest, to this date. It might be something our risk manager has been made aware of. Not sure. Hasn't sort of crossed our desks, but it sounds something that we should be exploring.
Thank you.
I think it's a great idea. If you ever watched Spain and Brazil in some of the competitions at previous games, it does get very fiery. So it's a great idea. We'll run with that.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, Chris. Glenn, fantastic presentation. Just quickly, from my point of view, from an interest point of view, given your professions, how is security being dealt with that many athletes and in Perth and with the world as it is now? How is the police and fire games going around security?
Yeah, luckily our games is predominantly driven by Western Australia Police. So we've obviously got the connections with our own state security and our operational support areas within our structure internally. We've got a director for risk and security. So he has created a security subcommittee. We've got our risk matrix and management plan in place. Every month we review that internally. Every month we take that to our assistant commissioner within WA Police. On that, for reviewing that security subcommittee, on that board is obviously the assistant commissioner, our superintendent and commander in charge of state security. They've already planned our physical presence and response to security incidents during the games, quarantined quite a number of staff, developing the response models around that. Our intel scraping has already began. It began during our bid process, actually. So they're getting across as many of the ideological threats, protests that may come up. So we're very confident at the moment. We're sitting in that place in regards to our preparation, commitment from WA Police.
Sorry, one follow-up question. What's the human resource numbers to manage the games from your point of view? How many on ground over the period of 10 days or so will there be to manage this amount of numbers, volunteers, spectators, participants, etc.?
Yeah, so our games management team will be around about 80. In addition to that, we've got 140 sports coordinators for the sports. We'll have over 2,500 volunteers, but we've also engaged private sector for a lot of our venue management, for a lot of our event management, logistics around like Super Sunday, for example. We're not going to be doing that internally. We've contracted that out. But our team that we're directly responsible for, including volunteers, would be in excess of 3,000. And we think that's quite lean, and it's just the position that we're in. We need to keep it as lean as possible.
Thank you.
So, one question from my end. What are the key lessons that you learned from last year? What are the key lessons from us?
I think planning, adequate planning, we can't understate how important the planning phase was, and onboarding as early as possible as well. So whether that be people, whether that be items, the shopping list is very, very long. Getting that stuff early. Obviously, our games are in March. Your games are a bit later in the year. Just prior to March, of course, is January and December and Christmas and everything shutting down. So if we're leaving things until early next year, we're gonna run into problems.
Yeah, whatever can be done early, do early, which is Birmingham faced some issues with that, and staffing. They faced some issues which were out of their control in regards to staffing, which made it very difficult for them, and they still managed to push through. We are facing some of those challenges as well, but we anticipated that, and we've got Plan Bs and Plan Cs.
Thank you, Hardley and Matthew, for a nice presentation. First of all, best wishes and good luck for Police and Fire Games. My question is regarding your vision. Please, you may elaborate more about your vision, especially in terms of extraordinary.
Yeah, so it's quite simple. We want to deliver an extraordinary World Police and Fire Games, which leaves a positive impression on everyone. When we speak to previous games participants, they highlight certain games as being extraordinary, and they highlight them for various different reasons. And we want to be amongst that list that gets spoken about for 20 and 30 years. So Australia last hosted the World Police and Fire Games 20 years ago in Adelaide, and people still talk about the Adelaide Games. People talk very highly of the Belfast Games for different reasons, but we want to be in that category. So we don't want to just deliver a good game, we want it to be extraordinary and memorable. And we also threw in there the positive experience. We can deliver an extraordinary games in one area, but it leaves a sour taste in someone's mouth when they leave it in another area. So we want it to be positive, and that goes for our workforce and the values that we deliver when we're building the games, and it's also a value that we want the athletes and the games family to also experience that and conveys that positivity.
And I think that further to that is just that legacy piece, which I know is sort of my role, so that is quite important to me, is the legacy item. But certainly for our workforce, but also for the community. Every interaction that we have during the games with either each other, but also the wider community is important, and leaving a positive impression for them as well. Normally when community engages directly with first responders, it's in a bad situation. They've called the police. There's been a car crash. There's been an injury, something like that, and the opportunity to engage with a first responder in that world is not great. So the games presents an opportunity, particularly with community engagement, to work with children, work with school groups, work with community groups in a much more fun, positive, relaxed setting, with sport being the centerpiece of that, and giving the ability for the community to see that first responders are human as well, and above all, we care for people, and that's what we want to try and convey. So that's a bit of a longer term legacy we hope to leave too.
Thank you. Best wishes. Good luck.
Last two questions. You mentioned about of knowledge in your presentation, and you also said that I wanted to understand from you what kind of exactly what that you're planning and
Thank you very much. I'll probably start by saying what this university and B Corps has done is miles ahead of what has been done for the last 20 years. So congratulations for the work that's already been done. So when I say the transfer of knowledge is almost non-existent, I'll take a step back. We've got very good relationship with the Birmingham, the Winnipeg, and the what was the one? Fairfax. The games directors of those games who did a very good job, and event management and event planning of mega events is their bread and butter. We can ring them up, we can speak to them on the phone, we can get answers, and they can send us bits and pieces of information as we need it, but we still have to interrupt them to get that information. We want to be able to provide all of the information that we've gathered, all of our experiences documented. Monday.com is our program management platform. It's capturing a lot of that. That will be open and shared. We currently share that with the World Police and Fire Games Federation, so that at any moment in time they can have a look at where we're sitting on anything, on any agenda item. So we'll be able to hand over a package that future hosts can read through, can get an understanding of the different nuances of delivering the games, not just rely on the personal relationship that they will have with us and they will have with the Indian team that comes before them.
Further to that, some of the things, unlike, let's say, the Olympics, they will have really long-term sponsors and partners that go from Olympics to Olympics, and they're Olympic sponsors. The World Police Fire Games Federation doesn't have that. So every games, it's engaging with sponsors. Once again, a whole new conversation. It might be the same overarching brand, but you're having the conversation all over again. There's a lot of my conversations I'm having with potential partners and sponsors. I'm talking to India as well. I'm certainly not saying you can be a sponsor for India. That's not our scope. But saying, look, there is future games after this, and we can start a connection if that's something that they're interested in, to hopefully at least give them a step ahead with some of those brands which we know then have supported the games in the past.
All right. So there were around 1,000 participants. In Australia, I guess we expect more than 15,000 that will be participating, and the crowd will be enough. In India, when India will host, and because the Indian participants will be more higher in number, we will be expecting more than 20,000 participants overall. So what are your planning? What is your planning basically for the crowd management, and also to manage that crowd and maybe everything which goes around during the event? What will be the volunteer system which you are adopting? Or is there any system through which you are tracking the volunteers and the management of theirs?
Yeah, I'll touch on a couple of things. So with that many people coming to the States, and March in Perth is a busy period anyway, so hotel bookings are generally close to their peak. So we've already engaged with an event travel partner who have secured 2,500 hotel rooms for the duration of the games, which equates to just under 30,000 room nights. They secured them early at a discounted rate. So when you go to book hotels now, their rate should be lower. And as you get closer to the games, their rate will definitely be lower. We understand that not everyone's going to stay in a hotel. There's avenues with Airbnb, and particularly our interstate competitors staying with people locally. Transport is going to be another issue, trying to move around 10,000 plus athletes across the metro area into our precincts. So we've already had approval from our Department of Transport to provide free public transport for all athletes and registered family and friends. So that's a saving of approximately 9 million. In addition to that, we're working with our public transport authority to develop a bus shuttle system complemented by our train system. And the person we've got working on that previously worked on the Sydney Olympics, so he's very much across that scheduling and the requirements in regards to that. Volunteers is huge. We've identified what we believe is the majority of the volunteer roles and are fleshing out those role descriptions as we speak. We'll be using a volunteer management platform which is locally built and delivered to manage those volunteers, the onboarding, the vetting, and then the training that we're going to deliver to them. And so our volunteers cover like sports, athletes, the tourism aspects, VIPs, transports, meeting and greeting at the airport, languages services, athlete services. So it comes down to the planning around that.
And I think one other area which is probably important for your games as well is the ballistic sports in particular. Australia has really significant firearm legislation, particularly in bringing firearms into our country and what to do with them whilst you have them. A lot of paperwork that has to go into that, and it's different from various countries. In particular, if you are a country taking your firearm out of your country, coming into Australia, it's quite consistent, but different countries' exit rules are different. So that's quite a large, complicated body of work. I won't pretend to know it. I know it because I don't. We have a very good expert, Jen, in our team who looks after that. But I think it's something not to be underestimated, because getting firearms into the country, either storing them or ensuring they're safely stored, transporting them, things like that is going to be is a pretty significant body of work. So something that you'll have to undertake as well.
Thank you so much. I request everyone to give them a big round of applause for answering the questions beautifully. To felicitate, I request Lieutenant Dr. Gaurav Singh Kushwaha to kindly felicitate Glenn, and IG retired from BSF Shri Manoj Yadav ji to kindly felicitate Chris Holly. Followed by a group photograph. Thank you again.